this grassland that we're standing on right now, if climate change changes in the next 50 years, as we predict that it will, the characteristics of the vegetation that you find on these kinds of slopes, these kinds of soils, will change with that climate and adapt with that climate. Today we're assessing our classification ecosystems of the boreal low zone and the Southern Lakes subzone of that boreal low. It organizes our current understanding of ecological relationships among vegetation communities, soil, and climate, and how their position on landscapes interplay with the climate to develop into the ecosystems we see today. So one of the questions we're trying to address is how a changing climate will affect the ecology of the Southern Lakes subzone. The relationship between climate and vegetation shape what we see today and the nature of the vegetation associations as they develop through time. Changes in climate could affect zone and subzone boundaries, how far this subzone extends throughout the Southern Lakes region. And it can even change the character of the units themselves.
It's important to understand this distribution of organic matter because we're going to show you a couple other soils in a few minutes where the organic matter has quite a different distribution in the soil. And that distribution is important in terms of how we interpret these sites ecologically. What we're going to show you here is a soil pit that reflects this representative site here in the boreal low Southern Lakes area. And we've opened it up to a depth of about 1 meter. And it's all glacial material, lots of big boulders in it, set in a matrix of silt and sand. And this is a very typical soil in the Whitehorse area.
Once we have this classification, then it can be used for all different levels of mapping projects. What we're doing is classifying it so that we understand in what parts of the landscape what soils and vegetation are occurring.
What different chunks of the landscape are as far as what their ecosite is. And we've described what's here now. If we look at what happens with climate change, we can start to say, okay, if the climate changes to what it is like, say, now in Dease Lake, then we can say what happens on these kind of sites at Dease Lake, what happens on those kind of sites that we were on before at Dease Lake, and we can start to predict a little bit about what might happen over 20 years or 50 years or 100 years.
So we can look at a south-facing aspect made of parent materials that are perhaps morainal in this boreal low subzone, and we can look at the same exact feature in, say, Mayo or in Carcross, and we can see what vegetation communities are developing on those, and we can start to see how climate shapes those vegetation communities given the same kind of enduring features, the same kind of site.